All right, so good afternoon. It is 5 o'clock on a Sunday. Um, it's been a week. Let's hear about this Joe Rogan podcast. I saw this and I was like, wow, this would be a good kind of reaction video. Yes, I've been doing a little bit more reaction videos. I actually enjoy them because I already react when I'm at home by myself and watching it. So why not just go ahead and react to it with you all? So this is Mel Gibson, again, Joe Rogan podcast on resistance to the Passion of the Christ and the Catholic Church and the resurrection. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we're going to see.
There's something about the written word that's it's a pretty interesting thing to throw into the mix. I know when I first started, it was kind of confusing, but then I got really good at it. And I think, especially with something like the Passion that I did, the written word was very important.
I just want to give also a little backstory. If anyone doesn't really know who Mel Gibson is, I would say look him up. Second of all, what the Passion of the Christ is, I would strongly recommend before watching this, go ahead and watch Passion of the Christ. It is an old movie that was directed by Mel Gibson. And is probably one of the most accurate depictions of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ out there. It shows very detailed depictions of the suffering of Jesus. I think a lot of movies that were enacting the crucifixion, they don't show the gruesomeness, the details, almost like the Lord gave Mel Gibson this revelation. Honestly, that's what it seems like. It seems like it's not just him. It's literally the Lord envisioning in his mind for him what the crucifixion was like, and him depicting it as much as he's able to in his own human limits on how to portray that in a movie. He got a lot of backlash about this, and so it's just something that, has been, he was probably mostly excommunicated after, doing the Passion of the Christ in Hollywood. And so interestingly enough, here he is, a little fact. I don't want to say fun fact because it's not fun nothing fun about this, but a little fact is while he was recording this, his house was burning down in Hollywood Palisades, literally during this recording. So that's very interesting to note. And then, so let's watch. This is the thought of doing a second Passion of the Christ. So let's watch.
Because it was, you got all those books, the Bible, you've got the different gospels and stuff that people are quite familiar with. Half the time, they didn't even need to read the subtitles. They could look at it and know what was going on.
That was a crazy movie because it was a great movie, but it seemed like there was resistance to that movie.
Oh, yeah. No, there was...
which I thought was very strange. There was like Hollywood resistance to that movie. Like people didn't like that you were making it, it seemed like.
Yeah, there was a lot of opposition.
Interesting, Joe Rogan pointed out the fact that he got a lot of backlash in Hollywood, like I was saying a second ago, for doing this movie. And think about it. He could have done any other movie and he would have not gotten backlash for it. He could have done a movie about Muhammad. Interesting that no one does a movie about Muhammad. As much as there's such a high Muslim faith, very interesting that when we do a movie about Jesus Christ, people don't like it. So, he's here, Mel Gibson has gone through a lot through, being able to, through, doing these videos or these movies of Christ, about Christ. And put a disclaimer, Mel Gibson's not perfect. I'm not trying to advocate for him. I don't really know. I think he did go a little crazy on the loopy end after the movie. So, the thing is, he ultimately needs Christ. I think he's Catholic it says the Catholic Church. So I believe he's Catholic, but still, the fact is, it's still about the real one, true and living God who had death. He died on the cross for us. And so let's continue to watch.
And I believe that, I actually am I was born into a Catholic family. I'm very Christian in my beliefs, So I do actually believe this stuff to the full. So
there you go. Mel Gibson just verified he is Christian. It's interesting that he said that he's like he was previously Catholic, like he was probably like maybe Christianed, the little sprinkling as a baby as a Catholic, but now he is full blown. Well, he said he's a Christian now, so it's interesting that he separated the two.
Where they elected John the 23rd Pope, right, in 1958. I was 2 years old. He was elected, and it was a very funny thing that happened in the conclave. Usually there's white and black smoke that goes out of the chimneys to tell you, we have a pope, habemus papam, and the white smoke came out. And everybody cheered, and they went crazy. And then about a half an hour later, black smoke came out. That never in history has that happened, that the white smoke came out. And then the black smoke.
So white smoke means we found a new pope. Black smoke means no pope.
That's right. They'd have votes, or there'd be one reason or another they'd have a round in the conclave, and black smoke would come out many times maybe. Maybe it would take 2 weeks. But never was it known that white smoke came out, then black smoke came out.
So what was the scenario?
That somebody was elected, and that maybe something else happened. And he was pushed aside and someone else was put in. So it was
power struggle,
some kind of power struggle. Depicting that was an honor, but it was also, you got the daylights beat out of you for it.
Yeah, because there's resistance, first of all, from secular Hollywood, where for whatever reason, Christianity is the one religion that you're allowed to disparage.
Yeah,
Christianity is the one religion where people. All these progressive, open-minded, leftist people, they'll embrace all these different religions until it comes to Christianity. And for whatever reason, that represents like white male, whatever it represents, colonialism, whatever it represents, it's negative.
Yeah, sure. It's gotten a bad rap.
It's so interesting. And I'm glad, Joe Rogan, you brought this up. I feel like I'm interviewing with him. I'm glad you brought this up, Joe Rogan. It's interesting that, like we said earlier, how it could be any other religion, but it could be any other movie about any other faith. It could be about Buddha, Krishna, and it would not get this backlash. But because it's about Christ, it's because it's about the one and true living God, the enemy doesn't like this. So that's ultimately what it is. But it's just interesting. Now, Joe Rogan is mentioning something about colonialism. And, I think I'm glad he brought this up as well, because this is the thing that, a lot of people in the world think about is this white man's religion, or this is, you're going to the white man's faith. And, a lot of this is in the Black community, to be honest. But it's such a lie from the pit of hell. It's ridiculous because, first of all, if you really even know, in the Bible, the maps are not even from America, first of all. So talking about colonialism, it's not England, it's not Europe. It is Middle East. So it has nothing to do with anything colonialism. And I know people, well, the slave trade, and they made us. Yeah, but they had actually a slave Bible. They literally took out things from the Bible, and they removed, things that they wanted to remove and gave the slaves whatever they wanted to give them about the Bible. So we have the full Bible now. We don't have a slave Bible. We have a full Bible that shows it's a 66 canons. So that's not even neither here nor there. It is not a white man's religion. That is a lie from the pit of hell. Because first of all, Jesus was not even white. He was Middle Eastern. He was born in by a Jewish woman. So it doesn't make sense that people have this kind of thought process about Christianity.
Sure, it's gotten a bad rap, and people do feel free to beat up on it.
Mm-hmm.
Even I do when I see it's like, when it's not fair.
Right.
I think it's off.
Right.
Like, when they appoint some cardinal in some diocese and he's been covering up for like people who are molesters,
Yes.
like Theodore McCarrick or Cardinal Wuerl or those kind of guys. I mean,
Or the Pope.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm not,
Benedict.
not Benny. Well, he was covering up, but so is the guy now.
Is he really?
Well, it's not great.
I thought he was like the more progressive Pope.
Oh, he's very progressive, yes,
but he's covering up for stuff as well. Well, they all are. I mean, it's a dark institution in a lot of ways because it's history.
Well, the institution, it was instituted by Christ, but that doesn't mean that it can't be flawed. And there's a school of thought that says it isn't what it purports to be anymore. It's moved away from what it was intended to be and what it is.
So, he just said earlier that he doesn't really attribute to the Catholic faith per se, but more so it seems like he was saying more to the Christian faith. However, a lot of things he's saying, like the Pope and things, are related to the Catholic faith, the Roman Catholic Church. So I'm not really sure. It sounds like he's a little confused on just what, and he even mentioned the institution of, like, Christ started the institution. No, Christ is the center. He is the head of the church. It is never he started and then he gave it to Peter and Apostle Paul. No, he is head of the church through the Holy Spirit. And that's the thing, is there is in the church, there's religion, there's man-made religion, and then there's true religion. And the Bible even talks about true religion, true faith, true, sanctification, true relationship. And so I think there's just some maybe like theological and error for what Mel Gibson is trying to explain. But I'll let him finish and then we'll go from there.
Well, whenever you have that kind of power, like I'm sure you've been to the Vatican, right?
Yeah.
It's stunning.
Yes, it's huge.
It's so crazy. When you're walking around, you see just the massive amount, just the dollar value in the art that they possess.
Yeah.
Just fast forward, because a lot of these things are Catholic based and I don't really need to know about that. I don't think you do either.
One of the things that he had done was he had moved a priest that had molested 100 kids, and he moved him to some new place where he molested deaf kids.
Yeah. Boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
That's the dirtiest, most evil practice that the Catholic Church has been accused of.
I think so. And many institutions as well.
Yeah.
But that is a very bad one. And I think it's all part and parcel of the same corruption that crept in. And when you asked what's the difference between pre-Vatican II, so Vatican II happened, and of course they took the church and they reformed it, and they changed things in it, and it didn't necessarily agree with everything that went before it. And up to that point, yeah, you could find it agreed with itself, but all of a sudden, you got something else.
So my thing is, like, with these, I think Mel Gibson, he has a point about, like, especially in the Catholic faith, but not even just Catholic. I'll be honest. There have been allegations of pastors just in regular, like, non-denominational, apostolic, whatever church, Pentecostal church, who has sexual misconduct and what have you. So he's making a point of, like, we do need to point the finger. We do need to call out sin in general, but that doesn't negate from Jesus Christ. That doesn't negate from the Bible and the Word of God. And we got to realize that the enemy is still at work, even in the church. He's trying to break up the church. So it's really not Christians. It's not true, holy filled, spirit filled, because if they were filled with the Spirit, they would not be doing that, because it tells you in the Bible what the fruits of the Spirit are. So, just to the point of saying, like, yeah, we give them a bad rap. We give them a hard time. It's not really representation of Christ, though. It's actually the opposite.
To the point where now, I mean, we got a pope that brought a South American idol into the church to worship.
Really?
He did. The Pachamama. He bought the South American, and he got.
I don't know what that is.
It's kind of like a South American god, Pachamama.
Why would he do that?
I don't even know what's going on. Something the Vatican did and the Pope and it's apostasy, but let's forward.
Good question. But he did.
Did he have an explanation for why he did it?
Yeah, it's kind of a weasel worded thing of like, oh, all religions are just as good as one another. But, if that's his contention.
It shouldn't be the Pope.
No.
I mean, how can you be the Pope if you say all religions are just as good?
Yeah, we all worship, So there's the Pachamama. There you go.
So he brought that in.
Yeah, into the Vatican. Then the hierarchy even worshipped. They had a ceremony around it outside.
What?
So, well, that constitutes apostasy.
Yeah.
That's an apostasy move, all right?
Worshipping false gods.
Yeah.
It's interesting that even someone like Joe Rogan, who is he's lost. I mean, he needs Jesus, but he even knows that that's apostasy and there's something wrong. And it's funny that that's the thing, that we know good and evil. Like, we have an innate nature of understanding that something is right and something is wrong. There's no one that can tell me that people think it's normal to just send like homosexuality, all this stuff is, this is not normal. There's people that, either maybe Rogan also, maybe he has some type of link to the Catholic faith or Christianity in his family where he was taught some of this stuff. So it's interesting that he said, like, yeah, this is apostasy, and they blatantly do this. Like, this Pope is out here blatantly, having apparently it seems like false gods. So let's see what else he's saying here.
That's number one on the Mosaic hit list.
Yeah.
Moses goes up on the mountain. He comes back down. People are worshiping a golden calf.
Yeah.
It's that.
Yeah.
So you can't do that. And for me, that's a departure from that's called apostasy.
Right.
That's a falling away from it. And the very nature of apostasy means that you have to be part of it to fall away from it.
Mm-hmm.
He just hit something really big there, and really a big deal for people who don't believe that you can fall away from the faith. Apostasy, he's saying, is someone who knew the truth, might not have been fully committed, deep roots, because if you were deep rooted, you would not have fallen away. I do believe that. But because you are not deep rooted, because you are swaying by every wind of doctrine, that's how apostasy comes in, because you're looking for you're trying to please man rather than God. And so here he's just proving a point.
So it's an inside job.
So what do you think? There's a motive behind these things?
I don't think
What do you think it is?
I don't know.
Sin, the motive is the enemy trying to take us all out, and the motive is trying to get us to go to hell. That's what the motive is. It's not that deep. It's not that complicated. He uses his minions. He uses his eunuchs and all that stuff to get what he wants, which is I'm talking about Satan.
But it isn't good. I think we're looking at a world where, and this is in the next film I'm going to do, I'm going to try and tackle this question, that there are big realms, spiritual realms. There's good, there's evil, and they are slugging it out for the souls of mankind. And my question is, why are we even important? Little old flawed humanity. Why are we important in that process where the big realms are slugging it out over us?
Oh, that's the thing with Mel Gibson. He has a lot of, I feel like, I pray that God continues to just renew his mind. I feel like I said, he's had a lot of things that he's been through after The Passion of Christ came out, and probably a lot of spiritual things. So that's why he's talking about there's a realm, and this realm is slugging it out. This realm, which is good versus evil, is at war that we don't even see. It manifests in the physical, but we don't even see it in the spiritual realm, the war that's happening. And the question he says is asking is, how are we that important? Why are we that important? It's because God created us in his image, in the image of God. He created us male and female. He created us, and the enemy wants to take us out, from the fall of man, Adam and Eve. He's been plotting to take us out because he ultimately hates God because God kicked him out because he was prideful. There's a lot of things. So yeah, that's why we're important. That's why Mel Gibson is important and valuable to God, and God wants to save his soul, just like Joe Rogan. God wants to save his soul. So we are valuable in the sight of God, and there is a reason for us to be here as humans.
And I think there's bigger things at play here. And institutions that purport to touch on the divine are necessarily going to be affected by that slugfest that's going on between good and evil.
Right.
And
sometimes good gives up ground.
Yeah. And maybe not on purpose.
So this story that you want to tell about good and evil, like, do you have a script, or is it just a thing in your head? What is it?
Yeah, it's the resurrection story. But it's not linear, because you can't really. It's hard to understand. So it's got to be put in a framework where you answer a few other questions as well. And you have to juxtapose the event itself against everything else so that it makes some kind of sense in a bigger picture, which is a hard thing to do. And it took my brother and I and a guy called Randall Wallace, plus my brother and I, took us 6-7 years to write it.
So are you doing this with historians as well? Are you trying to make it?
Yeah, historical stuff. Well, I regard the Gospels as history. It's verifiable history. Some people say, "Oh, it's a fairy tale. He never existed, but he did." And there are other accounts, verifiable historical accounts outside the biblical ones, that also bear this up, that yes, he did exist. And the other aspect of that is that all the evangelists, the apostles who went out there, every single one of those guys died rather than deny their belief. And nobody dies for a lie. Nobody.
Right.
So that's part of what I'm doing.
This is something where they honestly, genuinely believe that Christ is the Messiah, and they sacrificed their family, their life, everything to follow him and to death. They followed him because they believed it. And, that question that we can ask ourselves is, do we believe it? Do we believe that Jesus is truly the Son of God, and that he came and he, lived a sinless life, and, he, healed the sick, he raised the dead, he made the blind see, the deaf hear, and, now he's sitting at the right hand of God the Father. He died, but he rose on the third day. And so do we believe these things? Because what it seems like is Mel Gibson had some type of encounter. I don't know if it was like at first a spiritual wicked encounter and then God changed him around, or was it that, through the Passion of the Christ, that God has worked on him, or it could be a hodgepodge of both. But what it seems like to me is Mel Gibson is toward the right path. He knows that Jesus Christ is real. He knows that this was not a lie. Like, he genuinely believes this, because if he didn't, why would he be, even going this route? Just like he said with the apostles, kind of similar to him. If you did not believe this stuff, would you be going through all this persecution in Hollywood to write another, to direct another movie on Christ? So
showing nobody dies for a lie.
Yeah. Well, the resurrection is the one that is the most difficult for people to swallow.
Yes.
That's the one that requires the most faith.
The most faith and the most belief. Yeah, resurrection.
Yeah.
Who gets back up 3 days later after he gets murdered in public? Who gets back up under his own power? Buddha didn't do that.
I'm just like looking at Mel Gibson in awe at it's interesting because I know Mel Gibson before the Passion of the Christ, and like all the things, like how he's played movies, but honestly, I can't even think of any movie. You guys can put it down in the comments, but I can't off the top of my head think of any movie that Mel Gibson has done before the Passion of Christ. It's like that literally is his calling. of what God has called him to do on this earth is to, and he's fulfilling his purpose, is to depict the spiritual realm, is to depict in his art of movies and acting and directing the gruesomeness of the Passion of Christ, the gruesomeness of the resurrection, death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, and the spiritual principalities. He's like, it's not linear, meaning, it's not like you're thinking like from 1980 to 2001. He's like, this has been going on, and it's on and off. It's, it's been going on since the beginning of time. And it's interesting, he's going to have another movie out about the resurrection and how it relates to good versus evil. I think this is going to be an awesome movie. I don't even know when it's coming out. But I guess we'll find out more details as it actually comes into fruition.
So
you believe that was a real event?
yeah, I do. Yeah.
What brought you to that belief? Is this something that you've always had, or is it something you studied it and you've come to this conclusion because of the historical accounts? And
Yes. I think as a child, one accepts things on faith because, you're raised by people who are nice to you and they believe it. And my dad was a pretty smart guy. He was like Mensa smart, like real smart. Like back in 1968, he won Jeopardy, right? And then
really?
And then they brought all the Jeopardy winners back, and he played all the winners, and he beat all of them too. So he had a mind like a steel trap, and his memory was practically photographic. My memory is pornographic, but it's like his was like, I don't have that kind of mind,
right?
But I'm more like, he did math, and I can't add, but so as a child, you learn these things and you accept them on faith. And I still have that faith, but as I got older, I came to it through intellect and through reading and putting things together in accounts, and then occurrences like in my own life. I mean, just recently they verified the Shroud of Turin. Have you seen that?
I've been reading about it, and I know that there's some contention, there's some discussion and debate about it, but they used to think that it was only a couple hundred years old.
Yeah.
And now they've changed that.
Yeah, they said, no, it's back then.
They also
I think it's interesting. They verified, he said, the Shroud of Turin. And if you don't know what the Shroud of Turin is, it's when Jesus was buried, they still had his cloths remaining in the tomb when he resurrected. And one of the cloths was the one covering his head, his face, and it shows his face structure, like the structure of a man, which they believe was Jesus when he was in that tomb. And so they call it the Shroud of Turin. And it's a very interesting depiction. I'm like, wow, Jesus, is that how you looked at? It's amazing if that is, if it was verified, but I'm not really sure 100% about that.
Don't understand how it was made, which to me is very fascinating because it's not paint. It's not, they don't know what caused the image itself and how that technology would have even been available.
It wasn't.
A couple thousand years ago.
An intense light, atomic, to leave almost like a photographic imprint on a piece of cloth.
So that's what I just wanted to share about. I think Mel Gibson, the Lord, he definitely has a gift, obviously, of movies and directing, but I do believe that we need to continue to pray for his soul, that he really comes into the full knowledge of Jesus Christ. As you saw, there was a lot of truths mixed with, things that he's still dealing with spiritually. He needs a lot of deliverance with that. But ultimately, I just wanted to share about just this next movie is coming out for him called The Resurrection. I believe that's the name of it. I'll double check that. And yeah, just knowing that someone like Mel Gibson, even though he's not fully a true, like, let's say, committed believer, God can use him for his glory. So showing you that he can use any of us, he can use anyone for his glory and for his purpose of bringing people into the kingdom. And even Mel Gibson, he got persecuted. He wasn't even fully committed to Christ, but the fact that he was just writing a script, writing a movie, doing a movie about Christ, the spiritual manifestations of the wicked darkness of unseen world took a toll on him. And I think that's, again, one reason why I believe at some point he did go a little crazy off the rocker. But seems like maybe hopefully God is renewing his mind. All right. So that's all I have. I pray that you all have a blessed day, and we will talk soon.